All right, I'm joined by Saagar and Enjeti from Breaking Points. Good to see you, Saagar.
Good to see you, Johnny. What's up, man?
Not a lot. Good to be the one actually interviewing you for a change.
I can kick up my feet. It's nice. Yeah.
So you just moderated our panel on big tech censorship and monopoly power. What were your key takeaways from the discussion?
It was really interesting. I think that the crowd was definitely on the side of just one of our panelists, which was Rachel Bovard. But then we had institutional support for a lot of more like libertarian protection, which is a pretty good analogy, actually, I think, to the state of where the conservative movement is today on tech, which is that you have a lot of the institutional actors very concerned, I think rightfully, around free speech protection and more, but you also have a clear populist uprising kind of against many of the tech companies. And I think that the fundamental tension within that, especially within the American political right, that's why I'm glad we did the panel, because that's literally where we're at right now.
Is there hope for conservatives and libertarians working together, or is that not really a thing?
I don't know. Okay. I honestly don't know, Johnny, because here's the thing. Every coalition has a problem. So what I mean by that is left-right. People make a lot of talk about left-right coalitions on tech. Here's the problem, though. The left, who wants to act on tech, they want more censorship. The right doesn't want as much censorship. Then, within the right, you have the libertarians who will go after the tech companies and will say, well, they shouldn't have done that, but we're not going to do anything about it. And then you clearly have a Republican base which is deeply motivated to do something about it. At the end of the day, I think politics wins, and I mean by small p politics, as in if you have a supermajority of the voters, basically from what I can see on the Republican side, something is going to happen. I have no idea what it's going to look like, what form. The Ron DeSantis bill, the state, I think that's a pretty good indication of where things are going to go in the next 10 years.
So, question for you, coming from a populist perspective, coming from a nationalist perspective, sometimes these things can be in tension. You know, on the populist side, sometimes it's, hey, we want to break up big tech, we want to punish the oligarchs. On the flip side, you have like people like Peter Thiel, who were mentioned earlier, who say, competition is for losers. What you really need is monopolies, but monopolies that are actually working in line with the national interest, working for the good of society as a whole. Are you instinctivly against monopolies, or only when they're working against the national interest?
Gone back and forth on this question a million times. I really don't know the answer. Here's the truth. Like, should we have 5 search engines? Probably not, right? Like, actually, one search engine makes a lot of sense. Amazon is actually a pretty good idea. Like, buying 9 different things from 18 different websites, kind of a terrible customer experience. And you can vertically integrate all of that. I think it all comes down to the fact that we just have to be a lot more comfortable with acknowledging the downstream issues and being able to use government power. Amazon is the second largest employer in the United States. They hired hundreds of thousands of people just last year. Very soon, I think they're going to overtake Walmart. I have a lot of feelings about that and thoughts about, literally millions of working class people subject to the whims of Jeff Bezos and Amazon in terms of how they're going to live their literal day-to-day lives. If you think about the previous iterations of America, your first job could be at a grocery store, movie theater. Now, a lot of that is gone. It's just Amazon. Amazon warehouse job is the best job that you can get in a lot of different places. Well, that has downstream effects. So that's where I think we should move the conversation. Same with Google. It's like, okay, yes, maybe there should be one search engine. Should the search engine be allowed to own email and vertically integrate that with literally the entire suite of web services and own all that for free? Look, we've already seen some of the effects. I recently saw someone in their Google Docs was drafting a piece around COVID, and Google Docs just deleted it.
Really?
Yes, they deleted it. And the reason why is because, per their terms of service, free is not free. They have the ability to control that. I have a lot of questions about that.
Absolutely.
If that's the only word processor which is free on the internet. So this is what I have to think about some of the more downstream effects. And I wish people could have the level of nuance in some of this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Question for you about political realignments. You have a podcast called The Realignment. And when it was started, it was really about the shift in public policy that happened, sort of beginning with with the rise of Trump, with Bernie Sanders. And I would imagine that on level of public policy, you would have sort of your wish list of public policy items you'd implement. And at the time, they were sort of running along with the flow of sort of political realignment going on in the country. The question I have for you has to do with political realignment as it ends up sort of bubbling up in real life can be very messy, and it changes on a whim. So, for example, with at first with COVID, emerging from China, it seemed like this would be sort of a gift to sort of people that want to decouple from China. It was just obvious we've got all these medical supplies over there, we need to reshore. But with the lockdowns taking effect, it quickly became a libertarian moment again.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Ron DeSantis who has this very kind of odd sort of, I don't know, it's a tension all bubbling up. It's, it's anti-lockdown, but he's also anti-big tech. He's probably anti-China. And so all of this kind of coexists together, and it's messy, and things can shift so quickly. So how do you make sense of all that?
Yeah, it's the fundamental tension. And I think that the greatest challenge to the realignment thesis was the 2020 election results, which is, look, Trump won 10 million more votes. And let's be honest, he governed a lot more like a small L libertarian, and even a big L libertarian in some of the tax policy priorities that were put forward. And he won a ton more votes. Yeah. So does it matter? Like, does any of this stuff matter? I don't know. That's actually a really good question. And what you're seeing, I think, with DeSantis and the fundamental tensions within that is this shaking out of, I think it's all comes down to the single dividing line in the future of American politics is, do you have a 4-year college degree or not? And I know we're speaking to many college students in there, but if you're watching this, I'm sorry, you're probably in the minority on your campus. You're within the 20% or something like that. And the real question is, what does that do to you as a society? Because the higher institutions of American life are all run by people who have 4-year college degrees. They are increasingly separated from the rest of the population. They have majority of the wealth. They're going to soon own the majority of the property. They are the employers. They are the HR directors. They are the directors. They are the newspapermen. They are the journalists. I mean, I think you're starting to get the thing, and the what remains is the only thing that working class people in America have, which is their votes. That's it. That's the only thing. And so I think you're going to see this huge tension in the future between the educated class and the working class. And I really see this just splitting along the lines. You could see this in the Latino votes for Trump. You could see this amongst younger black men voting for Trump. A lot of it comes down to cultural affect, cultural taste, how you refer to something. Do you think America is a good country or not? The culture wars of yesterday are over. Like, gay marriage is not driving politics, and it never will again. Even abortion and guns. I mean, I'm not saying that people don't vote on that. A third of the people who voted for Trump in 2016 were pro-choice. Okay, something's going on there. Yeah. That's interesting. What is it that white working class men feel socially conservative on today? Not on social issues as we would have understand them in 1996, but they love America, hate critical race theory, they hate woke politics. This is what drives the future, and I think that's where the real dividing line is going to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One very practical question, advice for our students. So, your personal background, you worked for the Daily Caller, you've been a White House reporter, you worked for The Hill, you've been sort of both in the right-wing media ecosystem, the mainstream media ecosystem. Now you've, made a big leap, you've gone independent, out on your own, crowd-funded, which I know, you have very proud of that, and you've been very successful very quickly, which is pretty amazing. But advice for our journalism students. So we have about 70 collegiate network campus newspapers. Many of these students, we end up actually funding their first year's salary at a major media outlet, actually places like The Hill, like Daily Caller. So what would you recommend these young journalists go into those outlets and then learn hard reporting skills and then go out on their own, or just start their own thing right away?
I would say exactly. Go into the established institutions. And maybe that seems contrary to my brand, but here's the deal. I would not be able to be independent and offer some of the advice and the insights I had without having worked within the system. And I would tell everybody out there, go and get some experience. Don't necessarily think you can just go branch out on your own. It was invaluable to me to be an actual White House correspondent and learn how the White House works. Yeah. So whenever I see the Biden administration do something, I can tell my audience, I can be like, hey guys, I know what's going on here. They did this briefing. Here's what so-and-so said. Here's what they actually mean. Here are the coalitional players involved. Same thing whenever the Pentagon. I cover I'm very against the Afghan war. I covered the Pentagon for a long time. I can read between the lines of what these people are doing. Whenever I see a general pop up and be like, things are going bad in Afghanistan, I'm like, I know what you're doing. Yeah. Like I know, I know what's happening here. And this is all part of this very concerted media campaign. And so I would tell people out there to go and work within the institutions themselves. That doesn't mean you have to become an institutionalist. Yeah. Take some notes. Be like, what don't I like about this? That's what I did. Ultimately, it took 6 years, 7 years to be like, okay, what do I not like about these places? And more importantly, what do other people not like about these places? And then create a product that serves them. That's the most important thing. You can't do that if you don't actually know what you're doing in the first place.
Yeah, and if you're a right of center, up and coming journalist, would you have, if you're discerning, okay, do you, especially given the culture at places like the New York Times, like, do you, let's say you have an opportunity to work for the New York Times, or you could go to a place like the Washington Examiner, a more established kind of conservative right of center outlet. Any preferences, or is it all dependent on the circumstances?
All of the above. Look, all jobs in this industry are good. You're very lucky to have them. The Examiner is great. You can get a lot of experience. You get a specific type of experience. The New York Times is also good. I know a lot of people who worked at the New York Times who are on the right of center, and they have invaluable insight into how the center-left establishment works because they worked at the New York Times. Are you going to be in the minority? Yeah. Is it going to be annoying? Yeah. That being said, it's a great experience for you to get. And look, you can be somebody who's against the New York Times, and you can also go work there, because it's not necessarily about you being a flagship of the institution. It's about going, seeing how these institutions work, so you can build something new. That's the most libertarian thing you're going to hear me say today.
Well, on that note, we'll stop you there. All right, thanks, Saagar. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much.